The next step for your school in college football expansion is paying players as employees. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from the planet Arrakis. If the audio sounds odd today, it's definitely your speakers, your headphones, your car, and not because I left my microphone at work. Thanks for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day as a part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's cover athletes who are now employees in the NCAA. Massive Big 12 hoop slate today at UCF and Cincinnati both stay alive in Kansas City. Athletes becoming employees in the NCAA is something that I think is bad for the athletes. At what point, my first point here, the rest of expansion and the idea of mega conferences, I'm going to make the point, it hinges on college players being paid by their universities. The reason I believe that is because the NCAA president is the one who said it. This is something that is set by the NCAA. However, I don't think it's going to benefit the student athletes as much as many people believe. May I ask you this question? And maybe you think this is asinine, but when I really thought about it, I thought, here's what we're getting ourselves into. When you were in college, when you were in high school, prior to being an actual full-time employee somewhere, right, when you got thrown in your cubicle, I got plenty of my buddies who are in Dallas as CPAs in their first year out, and they hate it. You didn't want to do that. You don't want to be because now, we got to worry hardcore about taxes. Am I W-2, am I W-9? What do these W's mean? Now you got to worry hardcore about benefits. What are my benefits? What do my benefits mean? And how do I get this comp and that comp? And what does my healthcare look like? And how do I go through healthcare? And do I get a dog? When am I supposed to get married or kids in the fold? That's not a very fun time in life. I can tell you, I graduated college 9 months ago, and for the last 9 months, have tried to navigate the real world of being an employee of a major entity. If you're an employee of a college, I just want to let you know there is red tape. Can I be honest with you? Dartmouth students are unionizing. Dartmouth students, these basketball players, are unionizing. J.D. Piquel, if you've heard the name, played football at Cornell. He has told me Ivy League stories. Those guys, even the athletes, are super geniuses. No slight to them when we take our attention to Texas Tech and say, hey, Texas Tech football, basketball, baseball player, do you want to unionize? I'm going to go out on a limb and say 90% of them would say, what the hell does that mean? Which is probably what I would have said in college. I just don't know if what Jim Phillips says, Ross Dellinger reports that ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips says that additional benefits for athletes has never been greater than it is today. And that's probably true. And now Jim Phillips can't get out of his own way. And that's why this next statement isn't exactly something I agree with. He says, I think if you classify them as employees, a bunch of those benefits go away. Yes, I'm not sure if that's how I'd word it, especially if I'm a commissioner of a league where the future of college football is players being employed. I don't know if my thing is to say like, oh, no, you're going to hate this. Whoa, Ross, whoa, Jim, we're talking about the future of college and what is likely. I would probably just take a back seat and not speak quite yet. But me, as the talking head, I can tell you, what if there's something to like, if you classify them as employees, a bunch of the benefits go away. I don't know if the benefits go away. I think they get more benefits and more structure, actually. However, I think they're going to have a whole lot harder time functioning being student athletes because guess what? You're no longer just a basketball player who goes to class. You're no longer just a football player who goes to class. You are required as an employee of the university to show up to the hours that you are slotted to show up for. You are required, if you sign on these contracts, to be paid what you signed for. In NIL, if you could have made $100,000, let's say as an employee of a university, NIL becomes a bit stricter. You make $30,000 from the university. What if we see students making less? Now, there's a good side of this, that you can't be gypped by these NIL firms. Nobody can take money from you. I've seen where a student will sign a $100,000 NIL deal and the firm will take 40%. It's like, why would the firm take 40%? That's just the middleman at best here. You save that, yes. But still, if that 40% is gone and a student athlete makes $60,000, and especially if that firm is good about taxes and actually making sure the money has a trail here, if that is all put together, then that's better than a student athlete making $30,000 at their university. Maurice Gibbs, Coach Gibbs on Twitter, says this in response to Jim Phillips. I don't know who Maurice Gibbs is. This has no likes, by the way. I just thought this was awesome. He says, agreed. He agrees with Jim Phillips. However, every athlete doesn't get additional benefits, but every employee gets a base pay, and the best salespeople get the highest commissions. So that's what it's going to be. Hey, backup punter, the university is going to pay you, sure, but you don't make us any money. We can't give you as much as the starting quarterback. He is our finance director. We can give him 6 figures. You are a fall intern. We can give you $7,000 for these 3 months. That's probably I'm not sure you could make it even across the board, because guess what? Your job doesn't pay everyone in your office the same. And I think by being employees, that's probably what you get at the collegiate level just as well. And there's not the argument of oh, well, these are just kids. No. If they want to unionize, they are 18 years old. They are adults. They are working in the now corporate world at a university. They're employees of a university. The whole oh, they're just a kid thing. That's what the fun era Wild West NIL was. And if we didn't like that, now we go to them being employees. And the one spearheading that, his name is Mr. Commissioner Charlie Baker. He's the president of the NCAA. Commissioner is too strong of a word. He's the president of the NCAA. And Fortune.com, reputable for you enough, hopefully. Fortune.com reported this in December when Phillips had said, because the headline, colleges could pay student athletes at least $30,000 under new proposal that would shake up NCAA sports. And what Charlie said in essence is, can we just pay the athletes, every school that can afford to pay half of its athletes $30,000 can stay in a mega super league, super quadrant of the NCAA. For example, our Alabamas, our Michigans, even our TCUs, their athletic revenue, their college, their endowment, everything put together here could afford to pay their athletes enough to meet this quota. Whoever can meet this quota, which is around, I think it was $100 million in total budget for athletics in a year. Whoever can do this, you get to stay. Everybody else, you effectively get relegated into the middle realm of college athletics, where you guys just go play on your own. And if you can't afford to take college athletics seriously, make your own rules. And now Charlie Baker's grasping at straws here. He is saying, hey, guys, you rich and powerful people who hate me, he's Augustus Caesar. And he looks over at Mark Anthony. Is that Anthony? Is that a real person? I haven't been in high school for a while. He looks over and says, you know what? You be emperor. You just pay your way. As long as you've got enough money, you come to the table. You have some power too. I'm just going to sit back. They'll call me emperor as well. But you guys make the rules for NIL, for the transfer portal. Do whatever you want. That is him pleading with major conferences, pleading with major programs to stay in the NCAA. This is the most informational podcast I've done in a long time, by the way. I hate that the audio is kind of woo, 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 echo. Do you feel like you've learned something? I feel like I've learned something listening to myself today, which is odd. I come to remember the 3 E's: entertain, educate, inform, and educate. Maybe I don't know. Remember, and you all freaked out. So, oh, what is an I? Yes, I know, but I hope today you were educated and informed on why everything is moving the way it is. And I personally would have much rather just been in college and done my college stuff than be a corporate world employee, which is exactly what these guys are signing up for. But I guess you get health benefits, and no slight to you, Texas Tech, for your student athletes wondering what in the world unionizing is. But had somebody come to me in college and be like, dude, we at the student newspaper should unionize. I'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm going to take my $7.50 an hour and I'm going to skedaddle. I've got enough money to pay for food. Coming up, big day in basketball. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. eBay Motors is where you keep your ride or die alive. The reason I love going there is because right now I have a fuel pump outage thing in my car. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what I'm saying right now. Words are just coming out of my mouth. I just have a pump thing, a wire thing. My dad was walking me through it. So you know what I said? I said, Pops, let's go to ebaymotors.com and just see if they have a part. Because there's this whole backlog, back delivery on parts. So we go see superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and our little pump pump thing. So we get it. 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, and guaranteed fit from eBay means that your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Motors guaranteed fit is only available to U.S. customers. Go to ebaymotors.com today. Big day in college basketball in the Big 12 with UCF and BYU tipping things off at 12:30 Eastern, 10:30 over in the mountains where you live. First and foremost, before we get into every single one of these matchups, Brett Yormark has made it clear that the Big 12 tournament will stay in Kansas City through 2031. Guess what? You ready for this? I don't really care. It would be cool to see it in Memphis. We already get football in Arlington, so it's like, it would be cool to see it in Vegas. I think a basketball tournament in Vegas would be awesome. I think Memphis, all you guys crap on Memphis or even Nashville, though the SEC does it there, so maybe you can't. I just think that's a little more centralized for like a West Virginia or UCF. And I get it. A lot of you are ticked off that every year it's like Kansas gets a home court advantage in Kansas City. But guess what? And here's what I think is a really important part of this. Who cares? The winner of the Big 12 tournament typically doesn't go on to win the national championship. The winner of any conference tournament typically doesn't go on to win the national championship unless you are a UCF, a Cincinnati, a Kansas State right now. I wouldn't care about anything to do with this tournament. And I know that's a weird way to look at this. And that's how I'm going to segue that the BYU thing here, because I had a guest on the show yesterday who said the exact opposite. He said, win the games in front of you. In my opinion, same as UConn, who lost to Marquette last year in their conference tournament. I understand. Win your games, like, why go into March Madness on a loss? Well, because history tells us to, by the way. That's who win the national championships are the ones who lose their conference tournament. Sure, if your idea, I've just seen a lot of Houston fans and even BYU fans saying they want to win these games. Your idea of rest is winning, then fine. I've seen teams, and every team has a different circumstance. Kansas needs to lose to Cincinnati today. I hope Kansas loses to Cincinnati, literally for Kansas' sake. They're going to go much deeper in the tournament, and maybe Cincinnati gets into the tournament with a win against a top 20 team. With that being said, I don't know that BYU needs to win. The only thing, here's what I would do. I would use this to play around and move some guys around and say, look, here are a couple of guys who haven't started or don't typically start. Let's put them in the starting five and see what happens. Let's give some of our bench guys some extra minutes. What if that one random kid on the end of our bench hits threes like nobody's business? He nails 5 of them and we learn something new about our team. You couldn't really figure that out in the Big 12 regular season because you're fighting for March. But guess what? The teams that need to bolster their resume aren't necessarily doing it in their conference tournament if they're on the upper half of that conference. For like a BYU, if you beat UCF, I don't know that much really changes. And if you lose to UCF, guess what the talking heads on ESPN are going to say? Well, it's a Big 12 tournament. They didn't need to win this game. If you didn't need to win it, what's the point in playing it? Okay, fine. Go win a Big 12 tournament if you want to. I just don't. The one team I've seen win a national championship up close and personal in the Big 12 was Baylor, and they lost the Big 12 tournament. Same for Kansas. Oklahoma and TCU today. This is a must-win for neither team, technically. I think both these squads are in the NCAA tournament. They've each reached 20 wins in the Big 12. Oklahoma is 8-10 in Big 12 play. This would drop them overall to 3 games below 500, though that record won't exactly count going into March. Personally, Oklahoma left the conference, so I'm going to favor TCU here and ask the Horned Frogs politely to win this game and try to get better seeding. I cannot stress enough the difference in an 8 seed and a 7 seed or an 8 seed and a 6 seed. That is one of those. It's like, ooh, you really, like a 2 and a 3 to me is really a kind of a coin flip. It's like, oh, okay, well, you're just going to play each other. So sweet, nice. When it comes to a 7, you get out of playing the number 1 overall seed in the round of 32. And I think that's really good. When you get to a 6, you're really sitting much prettier, looking at what your path could be moving forward, though you do get a 3 buried in there. So I just think for TCU, they need to bolster a resume. They don't need to lose. They're one of these teams in the Big 12. There's a handful of them that don't need to lose. For Oklahoma, the only reason I'm not saying that about you and not rooting for you to win is you're leaving the conference. I do like Oklahoma a lot more than Texas, though. I like the fans, too. I like the Oklahoma listeners. They're good people. Speaking of Texas and Kansas State today. This game's at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Same deal. I mean, the Wildcats and Cincinnati's in the same boat too. You have to win these games. If Cincinnati loses today, they are out of the NCAA tournament. They did not reach the 20-win threshold in the Big 12, which I think if you do, you can make it to March. For Kansas State, if you lose today, drop to 18-14. Congrats. You're going to be a really good NIT team. But boy, I think the last thing Jerome Tang and company need after a tumultuous season where even President Linton and all the executives at Kansas State got in the way of what could have been a really good season with Naquan Tomlin leading the way. With all of that said, I think if you go to the NIT, it's kind of a slap in the face. So beat Texas and go to March. If you do beat Texas, you've got a real shot to make some sort of magical conference tournament run. I mean, they've beaten Iowa State within the last week. They beat West Virginia a couple of weeks ago in a game that was tight, but there's a conference win. They beat BYU. That's a really good conference win. But they had that non-competitive game against Kansas that a lot of people can't get out of their mind, especially after they beat Kansas early in the year. And it's like, oh, where's Tyler Perry? And that is it. If Kansas State's going to beat Texas today, which I hope they do, Tyler Perry is going to have to be that guy. Can he do it? Haven't seen it a lot. Wasn't even all Big 12 third team, which is shocking. Just needed more out of him. You need it today. For Cincinnati against Kansas, I know. The world will tell you that Cincinnati should win this game because Kansas is resting Kevin McCullough. Kansas is resting Hunter Dickinson. And I honestly think the world is correct. I think Cincinnati does beat Kansas for the betterment of Kansas. And my whole point here, Bill Self is resting players because he understands that he doesn't need to win the Big 12 tournament. He doesn't need to win a game in the Big 12 tournament, and he's still going to be okay. So you know what that means? By Bill Self saying, I don't need to do this, he is saying, that translates to, it's a synonym of, I don't really care about winning in the Big 12 tournament. And if the greatest coach, active coach in college basketball, doesn't really care about winning the Big 12 tournament, why should you, right? Like all these people who have been, I agree that I get the pushback and think there are some good points on why you should win in Kansas City for a team like a TCU. But for many of you, Bill Self included, like you're arguing with Bill Self, which all of us have done in a time or two. The officials sure haven't. I just, when the greatest coach in active coach in college basketball says do it, you do it. And they're going to do it. They're going to lose to Cincinnati. And good for Cincinnati. Now you got an even better shot at making March 20-13. Give me 10 teams, possibly 11 from the greatest conference in college basketball history. Coming up, Cincinnati got it done last night. And so did UCF. Is there any way we can sneak UCF in? There is one way. And for Cincinnati, are you a lock at this point? Can you become a lock? This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is where I go to make money. I went and I made money on FanDuel last night. You know what I will do live on this very show? I will go in and tell you exactly what I did on FanDuel or FanDuel to make money last night. So the easiest thing to do is go to the app, FanDuel app, or the FanDuel website. You type in your login credentials, as I'm doing right here, and you say, last night I had a 3-team parlay. They'll show you your history and whether or not that bet hit. I can already see based on my account balance that it did. And the reason it did is because that had Cincinnati money line, NC State money line, and Iona money line. The odds on that were $35 to win $25. And I got $25. It was that easy at FanDuel.com/locked on. And right now is the best time to join FanDuel because a $5 moneyline bet on any team that wins gets you $150 in bonus bets. That's right. Effectively free play from FanDuel. A $5 bet on your favorite team to win. If they do win, then you get that money back. So go in, bet on Cincinnati today against Kansas. You can win money the same way that I did yesterday on Cincinnati winning in the Big 12 tournament. Trust me. It's fun. FanDuel.com/locked on. FanDuel.com/locked on. Visit that site or the app today. Both Cincinnati and UCF get major wins. And the reason I say major is because it keeps their season alive, or at least keeps their March Madness hopes alive. I'm not going to say that UCF or Cincinnati won't go to the NIT because they will both get invited to the NIT. What I will say is that UCF has one path to March Madness, and that is winning the Big 12 tournament. And Cincinnati has one path to March Madness, and that is winning today against Kansas. To break these games down, Oklahoma State, once again down the stretch, felt like it was almost non-competitive. UCF is a really long, physical, good basketball team. Oklahoma State is a storied program. Eddie Sutton, thank you, is a storied program in the Big 12 who has won at times-ish under Mike Boynton and now is completely fallen apart. 12-20 overall, 4-14 in conference play. There's a point in this game I almost had to turn it off. 50-32 is like, I'm at work. What am I doing? And then once it gets like this, 60-35, 60-37, somewhere in that range. It's like, I can't keep watching this. It is non-competitive. An embarrassing showing in the first game of the Big 12 tournament for the Pokes. And it's the last game that Mike Boynton will coach there. I saw Boynton get thrown out in Waco a couple years ago. And the first thing he does, he walks across the floor, and instead of walking straight out, walks across the floor to Scott Drew, man-to-man, face-to-face, nose-to-nose, shakes his hand, says, "Coach, heck of a game. Heck of a game. Best of luck to you the rest of the way." And Scott gave him a hug. He's a respected figure in college basketball. He's just no longer the head basketball coach at Oklahoma State. I wonder who's next. We've seen a lot of first-year success. Grant McCaslin, Jerome Tang, we've seen a lot of first-year success out of Big 12 coaches, namely the ones that have come from Baylor. Maybe John Jacobs is the next off the board. For Oklahoma State, we create an entire Big 12 built around Scott Drew coaching tree guys because, well, it's worked for Texas Tech and Kansas State for sure, especially in year one. Then for West Virginia and Cincinnati, there's a point where Cincinnati's down by 10 in the second half of this game, and I'm thinking, well, that's not good, because I really, really thought the Bearcats could go on a run in Kansas City, and through my mind, I'm thinking, it's just not going to happen. That's going to be the saddest thing, the saddest what if. What if this could have been a sneaky Sweet 16 team out of that 11 spot? Don't have to worry about it, at least not yet, exactly. Beating West Virginia 90-85. And funny thing, I talked about how bringing in these four new teams from the AAC and BYU, like that's going to possibly dilute the end of the conference. And the worst two teams in the conference were Oklahoma State and West Virginia. West Virginia didn't even win 10 games, and I can only say sorry, give my condolences to that fan base. You didn't ask for this. You didn't deserve this. This is not something that was obviously your fault. And West Virginia could have been a top 5 team in the Big 12 had circumstances been different and had Bob Huggins not done the wrong thing. He did the wrong thing and he got fired for it. West Virginia's season is done. There's no CBI. There's no NIT. There's no nothing. And Lukosius for Cincinnati. Dede Richards. For Cincinnati, watching those two guys go back and forth, one of them having an unbelievable first half, the other having an unbelievable second half, both of them lighting it up from 3 and making 7 apiece. If you do that again, and then you do it again and again and again and again, that's where Cincinnati becomes dangerous down the stretch in March Madness. And I would love it. As many Big 12 teams that want to become dangerous as possible down this stretch, please do it. For Cincinnati, for UCF, nicely done. You beat a couple of Big 12 teams that have been around for a long time, and your tournament hopes are alive. Cincinnati's are much better than the Golden Knights. Sorry, Knights of Central Florida. Wink. And I think the Bearcats are a win away. I think UCF is a win of the Big 12 tournament away. But boy, if both these teams keep winning, what if we get, and Kansas State, what if we get 12 teams? If UCF wins the Big 12 tournament, 12 teams in a March Madness? It would happen, actually. This has been as abrupt, wasn't it? Come back tomorrow. We'll break down all those games. We'll be flipping late night. I'm going to Baton Rouge for the Bananas and the Party Animals. So it's going to be a blast. Alex Box Stadium. I'm going to see Mike the Tiger. I'm excited about that. This has been always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose grande.